Thought and believed about successful buying, selling, and financing your home was wrong. Welcome to HomeWise with Michael Miget. This is where you can count on straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home. Whether it's buying, selling, or financing, even maintaining and growing its value along the way. Coming to you from the News Talk STL studios at Union Station in St. Louis, here's your host, Michael Miget.
Well, thank you very much, movie trailer voice guy. This is such an important process, and we are happy to bring it to you. My name is Paul Cook. The creator of the show, Michael Miget, is, of course, here and creating and doing all he can. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Paul. How are you doing?
Excellent. I am ready to take this on today. This stuff is crucial. It's so important in the financial life of a family, of an individual, and we've talked about questions and so many different things. This is our 13th episode, and we've tackled a lot, and today is a big one. Today is a big one in this home buying process, and all we're talking about, one question: how much money do I need to buy a house? We're going to hit that. Answer it right now, just in 3 words. I'm just kidding.
I don't like to boil things down to be oversimplistic.
Yes, so. I know you don't, and that's great. That's a great thing about the show.
But yeah, and it's, I've said before, this is a big topic. There's a lot of things that can derail the home buying process. So we've talked about it before. It's important to follow a system, especially if you want a predictably successful outcome, which, come on, we're buying a house. It's important. Who doesn't want a successfully outcome or have a successful outcome?
Absolutely.
So, we've been talking about the process, okay? A system, a process, it's following a process, it's step by step. People tend to error or go wrong when they start because they just want to jump in. And I get it, people want to look at houses. We're talking about buying houses, we want to move. We want to get how, we want to look at houses. That's the fun part, okay? Mm-hmm. And you can do that, and a lot of people do start there. But if you don't address some of the beginning pieces of that, right? So we've talked about the idea of asking questions and having an idea of sort of where you want to get to, where you're going before you actually leave. Before the train leaves the station.
Yes, nice, and you've signed all the paperwork
that it knows where to go. Now, a train has the advantage of having a track. So maybe in that analogy, we just want to make sure we're on the right train, okay?
Yes, that's good.
Make sure we're going to get to where we want to go. And so where was that starting point? Okay, it was asking questions, but specifically there were 2 questions. All right. What are your goals? And how long do you plan on living in the house? Or how long do you plan on having a loan?
Huge,
okay?
Huge. The 2 tracks right there.
Right. And now that's within the bigger picture of the overall process. First step of that is figuring out your financing. Okay. So again, people generally start with, hey, I just want to look at houses. Of course, the loan guy is going to say, hey, you need to figure out your financing first. And,
if he's smart,
now sometimes some people naturally start there because they don't know if they're going to be able to get qualified. Maybe you're a first-time home buyer and you haven't been through the process before, so you don't know. But what I find is that seasoned homeowners, seasoned home buyers, people who own an existing home and maybe are doing it for the 2nd, 3rd, maybe even 4th time, might tend to skip over this piece, okay, because it seems unimportant. Okay, of course, I know I can get qualified. I don't need to check on that. I'm well qualified. I know what I can afford. I know what I want to afford. I even know the house that I'm looking at. Maybe, but maybe not. It's a big decision. Do you want to risk it? Okay. Now, the risk is that maybe you're not looking at the right thing. Okay. Now, it's not for me to tell you what's right and what's wrong. I mean, like that house versus this house because this one's right and that one is wrong. But I mean from a money perspective, the financial perspective. Okay. So remember, this is a show about financial advice for homeowners. Okay. Specifically for homeowners, a process that tends to get ignored by traditional investment advisors. And
Very important point.
right. And for the mortgage advisors that are out there, a lot of them tend to be technical focused technicians, just get through the process because that's generally how we get paid. All right. So every once in a while you find a guy like me, which is strategy focused, okay, taking more of an advisory role. And that's really where I see the benefit. Okay, so how does that translate to bring this full circle back into the process? We start by asking those questions. You think you know what you're looking at, but you've made a decision. You know, maybe you're thinking like, okay, you know, we can afford 200 or 300 or 400. Maybe that's based on, well, we have 300 now and our payment is this. And so we're going to move up to 400. And yeah, it's going to be more, be a little bit more, but you know, exactly where that's going to fall, you know, we're good. We're comfortable. Like we've talked about it. We're going to do it.
It's kind of a guess, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it is a guess.
Guessing is no strategy.
Doesn't matter if you're guessing high or guessing low. The point is we want to be on point. We want to be more deliberate about what we're doing and not just kind of, you know, let the chips fall where they may or just kind of see what happens. So if you're looking at 2, 3, or 4, maybe you could be or should be looking at 220, 320, or 440. Okay? Because if we apply the strategies that I have, ordinarily what you'd be able to afford at 400 or what you think you want to spend limits you to 400. I can get you into 440. Okay? Well, that's a different house. Okay? That's a different category. Doesn't that sound like more fun?
It does sound like more fun.
It sounds like more fun.
I want to talk to that guy.
Without the guilt.
Who can do that.
Without the guilt, right? Because, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many times it's happened, you know, somebody, you know, I'm talking to them and I ask them, you know, it's a common question that I ask is, you know, what are you looking to spend? Because I need to get a ballpark.
Yeah.
All right. And there's no right or wrong answer. There just is an answer. So I have a starting place. By
the way, to get here, HomeWiseRadio.com. That guy who was talking, you know, of course, these are just examples, but maybe it's more of a payment, not a payment, more of a home you can have because of your strategy. HomeWiseRadio.com. Just real quick, wanted to jump in there with that. Paul Cook, Michael Miget.
Yeah, you can always get more information on this at the website.
Okay.
You can find me at the website. Find us on Facebook, YouTube, everywhere else. We're practically everywhere now.
You can watch us now.
You're watching us on the radio.
Yes.
Right? Watch us on the radio. I'm working.
These are not
that.
highly paid TV professionals right now.
Right. I don't think I ever pull that one up. So, point is, it's more fun to look at 220 versus 200, 330 versus 300, 440 versus 400.
Absolutely.
Okay, so somebody goes online, they look at the houses, maybe they look at the mortgage calculators, they know a friend who bought and their payment is about, or they told you their payment was about this, and you get an idea in mind of what you think you can, you know, where your limit is. Okay, that's generally the way it gets told to me. It's like, oh, we don't want to go over 300, let's just say, pulling a number out of it.
Always those things in your mind, those limits you're putting on yourself.
So you go out and you start looking, and yeah, there's houses for 300, and you know it when it happens, right? When you find the house, when you find the right house, and everything, everything that's in disarray all of a sudden syncs up, and it's like, this is it. It jumps right out at you. Mm-hmm. But it's 320.
And that's it. That's the max.
Well, no, I mean, that's the list price.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's listed at 320.
Yeah.
It's more than the 300.
And you're like, oh, can't do that.
And I'm not even talking about qualification right now. Like, oh, the max we can do qualify for is 300 or 310. This is just, you know, people have an idea of what they want to spend as far as a budget goes. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that translates down. They go from price to payment. Now, there's a lot of variables in between there, and they've guesstimated
price
at a
to
few things.
payment.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's generally the dial, the lever that gets used to manipulate affordability. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you need to make a house more affordable, you know, you'd say like, oh, I want the 320 house, but I can only spend 300. Well, let's go offer 300. Okay. Now the market we just came out of, forget it. In fact, forget about offering 320. You probably need to offer 340 if you wanted to get it, if it was a nice house, if it was going to be an attractive house, because there would most likely be a bidding war on it. Now, that still might even happen today.
Yeah, we have somebody who knows about that coming up, our guest, Brandy, who's going to help us with that as well. But, hey, you're right on it as well, on the front lines of this thing.
Yeah, well, that's what we've been talking about week after week. Now we're moving into a more normalized market. So the bidding wars are fewer and further between than they are. But my gut tells me that if you're looking, we talk about the HGTV house, right? The one that looks like it was just finished. It looks really nice. It's clean. It looks like it's just had some remodeling done, things like that.
Updates.
Exactly. It's like ready to go. And there's going to be some demand for that house still. Okay. So you might need to go over 320, but you wanted to be at 300.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and again, not a qualification issue. It's just a budgeting issue. People trying to be responsible, right? What do you do? Well,
what do you do?
Most people will, we can make it work. We'll cut back somewhere. We'll do this. We'll do that. They convince themselves, mind massage into that. Okay. Now, just between me and you, what happens with the home is you're going to be in it for hopefully a long time. Right? It's a long time thing, 5, 6, 10, maybe even 20 years, depending on if you're just starting out or not. But it's most likely what's going to be a long-term financial decision.
One of the big questions at the very beginning. That's great.
Over time, you're more likely, you're likely to make more money, right? So your income's going to go up. Now, we talked about this before. You have a fixed rate mortgage, okay? Your mortgage payment's not going to go up. So what it starts at now, barring small changes because of insurance and taxes and things like that don't have anything to do with the financing,
right?
Like whether you had a loan or not. If you won the lottery, walked in, paid cash, you're still going to pay for homeowners insurance. You're still going to pay real estate taxes. Okay, so taking that out of the equation, we're just talking about the loan component of it.
It's fixed.
A fixed rate mortgage. It's a fixed payment throughout the whole thing. So payment number 1, payment number 180, 15 years later, if you have the loan that long, same payment. Okay. But if you look at what you made today compared to 15 years ago,
statistically, you'd be up.
A lot, right? A large decision now. Now, not if you're a retiree or things like that, but if you're, we're talking about families, people, in their 30s and 40s moving up into their 40s and 50s as you move younger into your prime earning years.
Yeah.
Which now, that used to be your 40s and 50s. It's moving into the 50s and 60s. At least I hope.
I do too. I was like, okay, I hope he's going up, not down on this.
I'm not ready there for that. I'm not ready for the downhill part. I'm still on the uphill.
I'm running from it. Yes.
So, you're going to be most likely making more, but you're not going to have a larger payment. So you sort of grow into it over time. And it's not uncommon for me to hear back from clients that I've worked with in the past that were maybe concerned or felt like they were being a little aggressive on the front end. I didn't have that fear, but they did. That's okay. That's one thing I don't want to counsel against. Right. Unless it's extreme. Yeah. Unless it's very extreme. Okay. But they will come back and say, oh, it was no problem. Because, this happened, that happened. They can attribute it back to a particular event or whatever. But,
and they're thankful that they did that they were a little bit at the upper end. They grew into it. They have this home they love, schools, neighborhood, all of that. It's a good thing they made that choice and that you helped them get to that.
Yeah, because it's a long-term decision. You've got time to grow into it.
Yeah.
Talking about the home as, the investment component of it. It's important to get the right house. Okay. And if it costs a little bit more, let's figure out what we can do to make that more affordable for you. Okay.
And that can happen.
Right. So, today we're going to talk about financial resources that you have to put towards that purchase. Okay. it's important. This is essentially the fork in the road when we get into the real numbers of what your buying structure is going to look like, okay?
Yeah. Put a pin in that right there. This is radio, HomeWiseRadio.com. And then a little bit later in our next segment, we're going to talk to the dude. That's what some of her friends call her. She's a returning guest, Brandy Dudenhoeffer, and we'll have her coming up as well. You're listening to HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget. Much more to come. I'm Paul Cook. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Indeed, yes, you're listening to HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget. I'm Paul Cook, and just like you probably know more than I do. I'm learning so much about all of this home buying process, and our big question today, how much money do I need to buy a house? And you said it closing costs and down payment. Those are huge elements of this, the elements. Michael, tell us more. You brought us to that, and I'm curious. I know everyone is about a little more on that.
Right, I brought you to the crescendo.
You did.
And we broke.
You're like Ryan Seacrest on American Idol. We'll be right back. The winner is, we'll be right back.
Next week.
Yes.
Not next
That's
week.
good. You're learning, my friend.
Yep, I am. It just, we're working on having more fun.
Yes,
right?
we are.
We're trying to see like how little we can stretch, how long.
Throwing curveballs at you and seeing if
right,
you can hit them.
So the big question was, how much money do I need to buy a house? Right? It's a complicated question. Seems simple. If we break it down, we've just talked about that for quite a bit, beat it up pretty good. But numbers wise, it breaks down into the first piece of the first half, down payment and closing costs.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So down payment. Well, how much do I need for a down payment? Right. And go ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers. And
that's interesting.
Because some people don't know, and some people have no idea what you're talking about.
They guess.
And then other people have heard things that were right, wrong, somewhere in the middle. They heard old information, they heard new information, they heard special. I mean, there is no right or wrong answer. There is, and that's why I pose the question the way that I do. Right? It's not, hey, make sure you got enough for that 5% down payment or that 10% or that 20%.
Yeah, that definite.
Or when sometimes I will ask them, how much money do you have for a down payment? Like, oh, I got 20%. Like, oh, well, are you sure? Like, do you know? Oh, yeah, we got it. We got 20. We're going to put 20 down. Like, just curious. And I already know the answer why. It's because they want to avoid the PMI.
Yeah,
right?
That's their big thing.
By the way, that's a whole subject in and of itself. That's enough for a whole single, actually more than one show, but I'll condense it down to one show. We will address that at some point. Just understand that the decision on how much to put down isn't really, people make it about that, but it shouldn't be about that.
It's overemphasized in their minds.
Because of the stigma attached to paying PMI and that it's a waste and things like that, okay? There are other decisions that you're going to make. There are other uses of your money that could be better or better used than using money to avoid paying what might be a little bit of PMI.
Than
right?
using money to avoid what might be PMI. I know, right. And it's interesting. So it's not the devil.
Right. So it goes back to the first question. One of the first questions is, what is your goal? Okay. What are your overall goals? Your overall financial goals? What's your goal with the house? All right. So we'll get to that in just a second. All right. But just to answer, the question up front, how much do you need for a down payment? You need somewhere between 3 to 5% on the low end, minimum. And you could go upwards of 20, 25%, very common. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and both of those have different ramifications with them. You don't make that decision in a vacuum. You make that decision in conjunction with a bunch of other decisions. All right. So
also huge.
Now that's affected by your availability resources. So obviously, you want to put 20 down. You think you want to put 20 down, but if you don't have 20, can't put down what you don't have.
Yeah.
Right. So
Stop looking for a house or something, some archaic thinking, that you don't need to have that.
Well, right. And see, some people even fall into that bucket. Like, well, I need a minimum of 20% down in order to buy. I don't have 20, therefore I can't buy. And they've moved on and they never even get up the bat to ask the question. Right. And then other people know that they need just a little bit of money and don't think about it much beyond, they're just like, oh, it's a minimum, and that can also be dangerous as well because you might make a bad decision surrounding that. Okay.
This is why we need a dude like you. HomeWiseRadio.com. Of course, I'm a fan, but Michael Miget, there's a lot of questions to ask. You can't just be in your backyard.
We've got one fan.
Yes, that's it.
Good
it's
news.
me.
Good news. We
Join
found
me.
Him. We
Join.
found him.
I'm lonely. I'm lonely, but you just can't make these choices alone. Just going by what your dad said. I'm sure your dad's great or whatever, but these old ideas of this, I am learning are not a good idea.
Right. So you're 3 to 5 on the minimum end, upwards of 20 plus if you have resources. By the way, paying cash is the same as 100% down payment. Issues with that. We've talked about that before. That's a whole nother show we're going to talk about. Might be better decisions to make, better things you could do with your money. All right. But it's understand that even though it sounds like a different thing, it's really all the same question, which is how much, and most importantly, why? Why are we saying that? All right. So,
how much do I need and why?
But talking about resources, in order to put it down, you have to have it. So where's it going to come from? All right. So sources of down payment. If you own a home now, most likely that's going to be your existing residence, right? Equity built up in your current home that you're going to use to buy your next home. Right, that's most common. All right, but outside of that, savings and investments. Some people just save it up. Okay. By the way, no matter whether you're a first-time buyer or a rebuyer or an existing homeowner that's buying another home, still might use savings and investments in addition to their existing equity, or they might, decide to keep the house. But a couple of overlooked categories are, one is gift. People know about it, but they don't think about it very much. But it turns out to be a fairly common thing these days.
A gift given to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
family
now,
maybe?
Right.
Or?
Yeah, it's got to be a family member.
Okay.
There's strict rules on what it is. Because, see, the sourcing of the down payment matters, right? So when we're looking at this is like
interesting.
This is an underwriting guideline question, okay? Aside from it just being a financial question, but the underwriter is going to look at this and they want to see, basically it's skin in the game, right? What are you giving up or what are you putting in? The money that you're putting in, they want you to have earned it.
Okay.
So existing equity in your home, you earned that.
Yeah.
Right? You've paid your dues. You paid your payment. Your house has gone up in value. You've earned that. If it's savings, if it's investments, money that you put away, socked away over time.
Skin in the game.
You've earned, You've earned that money. Okay. So did I earn a gift? Right? Well, it's not so much. The idea that you earned something so you have skin in the game is just one thing to tether you to that property.
Yeah.
Because this is part of the collateral issue.
To keep
like
you
you've got
doing it, not
there, right?
bailing
you've
out.
You've got an additional reason to want to pay that loan on time every month. You don't want to lose what you put in. So you need to have had some like ownership of what you put in. So the way a gift works into that is it comes from a family member. Somehow that's viewed as you earned it.
Well, it's actual money.
Well, it's money, right? So it's money that you would have been entitled to, but the fact that it came from a family member, there you've got that additional tether there with the money. So mom or dad gives son or daughter, or son-in-law, daughter-in-law, if there's marriage there, money to put down on a house.
Yeah, and that's part of that down payment question. Right. Down payment answer.
Right.
Yeah.
So now here's another interesting one, wedding gifts.
Oh.
Okay. Graduation gifts. So it doesn't just have to be the single, like the early inheritance, which is sometimes the way that it's looked at.
Yeah.
But it can be money on hand. You just have to explain where it came from, and it has to make sense, right?
To the underwriter.
Right. It can't, right. What they want to avoid is found money. You know, like, the old school proverbial money in a mattress, no good.
Yeah. Is that right?
No good. It needs to be in an account. It needs to be seasoned.
What about gambling winnings? Sorry, I'm just throwing it at you.
That is
the casino. All of a sudden, I have 50 grand or something.
That's a gray area.
Okay.
All right. So generally speaking, in order for that's going to fall in the category of, I think, all right, now.
Which I'm totally putting you on the spot.
You are.
Yes.
So you have to, we would always want to check this. Okay.
Yes.
But, normally the way I do this show is I just pretend like you're a client and you're asking questions.
Yes. Hey, I'm getting a lot of free advice. Well, so are you as a listener.
Right. The way I would answer that, since I'm in the hot seat here,
yes,
is I 100% don't know for sure. Okay. My gut tells me that because it's gambling, it's going to be scrutinized more, right? Because gambling, it's not a job, right? And it's not, they're just not going to view that as like you earned it.
Yeah.
Or, if you get married and you get gifts and you say, I got $5,000 in cash gifts from a wedding.
Yeah.
Right? They get that.
Yeah, that's an event. That's
By the way,
thing. That's a traditional.
Right. See, that's attached to an event that you have skin in the game.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's a marriage, right? It's a marriage,
It can go back. You can look at it, in a way.
If you have a familial relationship with the person giving you the gift, all right, or the money, you've got that additional tie.
Yeah.
You don't have a familial relationship with the casino or the dealer.
It's a great gut.
So it's going to fall more into a category where if it shows up on a tax return and you can show it for 2 years,
yeah,
then we might be able to do it.
Okay.
Okay. But just as a general rule of thumb, now, just aside from all that, take a step back. At least, around here, we don't run into too many professional gamblers.
Yes.
Right? That's where it's going to show up on a tax return. But I've had it come up where you like the lottery winner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I was, when you mentioned lottery.
We won $500,000, 8 years ago. So we don't work. Or I don't know.
And that's been on tax returns.
I'm just making this up.
Repetitive years.
Well, once. It was on there once. But it's not on there in subsequent years. But it's not something that they earn money from. They're just kind of living from. So, I mean, those are situations where it's difficult for an underwriter to assess future ability to make payments. And that's what they have to be able to figure out with some degree of certainty, have some ability to rely on the fact that you have an ongoing wherewithal ability to, not just willingness, that's credit, okay, tied to the house, that's collateral, okay, the capacity is what it's called, the 3 C's of credit. This one is capacity. It's the debt to income ratio. When you're figuring out the income for that, you would need to show it as income first in order to show it for the for the source on that. So
that's really cool though to learn kind of the thinking behind the curtain there, and it's responsible. It's very important.
So I would not say never.
Yeah,
but it's definitely something we're going to have to look into, but fortunately around here it doesn't show up.
You didn't throw anything at me though when I said that, when I threw you under the bus, so you'll throw something at me later.
There is very little that I haven't heard bore.
Yes, I can imagine 31 years doing this.
Right. So
what about the closing costs?
Moving on, an additional one that gets looked over quite often is 401k.
Oh.
And a lot of times that's my go-to. People have a job, they have a 401k, they might be able to borrow from it. Okay? And that is my one of my favorite places to do.
Hey, I get it. Is that the second biggest?
I don't know if it's the biggest or not, but it's just it happens a lot because it's a place where people have money.
Yeah. So you can do down payment from that.
Right.
Okay.
So moving on to closing costs. All right. Sources are all the same. But what happens is, closing costs is a category that often gets overlooked. So you have your down payment plus your closing costs. Closing costs can average anywhere from 2 to 3, maybe 4% of the loan amount.
Okay.
Depending on size of the loan, size of the purchase, where you're buying, things like that. Okay. So, but like if you take the scenario where somebody, I'm asking about financial resources, what do you have to put into this? Like, oh no, we got the 20% down. First thing that pops into my mind is, well, it's not really 20, it's 23. Because you need the 20 for the down payment, but then you're going to need the 3% for the closing costs that you're probably not taking into account.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I know I haven't.
It just becomes part of the conversation. But where does that come from? It comes from all the same places, except with closing costs, we have an additional sourcing possibility. All right. So you have a category called interested third party. Interested third party, the seller of the property, the lender on the loan, maybe even the real estate agent, people that have an interest in the transaction can contribute money. Now it's limited, okay, depending on the loan type and how much you're putting down and things like that. It can be anywhere from 3 to 9% of the purchase.
Okay, ITP.
Yep.
All right.
Interested third party.
That's fascinating.
And where this really gets interesting, and you hear me talking a lot about loan structure and strategy and things like that, there's a special category of these that the seller can contribute called seller concessions. Okay?
Okay.
So the seller can agree to pay your closing costs. And if the seller agrees to pay your closing costs, then you don't need to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can get into the house for less money than you would need. So if you were going to put 20 down, but then I told you, well, it's really not 20, it's 23. But then if the seller's going to pay your closing costs, now we're back to 20.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're in a 3% down bucket and you thought you just needed 3%. But then I come back and say, well, you need 3 plus 3. Whoa, what's the other 3? Well, that's your closing costs. Oh, well, now I need double. See, now that number got fairly big sounding because now you just doubled what I need. So if it was a $200,000 house and I was thinking I only needed $6,000 down, well, now you're telling me I need 12. Well, you just blew me out of the water. Yeah. Right? Or you've made this difficult. Wow. You've made this difficult on me.
The levers, right? It sounds
difficult to wrangle that. So, but the seller can contribute that 3%.
It sounds
or whatever, or a combination of seller, lender. Lender category is lender credit. And then the other thing is just shopping for your settlement services.
It sounds like good. Okay, sorry, I cut you off. Settlement services.
I'm just going to say, the closing costs, things like your title work, your inspections, your homeowner's insurance, other things like that that aren't a part of the money that's used to purchase the home, but are incidental to the purchase of the home, are just called settlement services, fall into that closing cost category that I laid out there. So in other words, the seller could come along and agree to pay, hey, you know what, I'll pay your title charges, I'll pay your inspection charges, I'll pay for your first years of homeowner's insurance, all of those kind of things. It just gets lumped together into a lump sum. It goes into a category that other people can pay separate from the money that you would need for the down payment.
To make this purchase go their way. I was just going to say, it sounds like it would be a really good point to bring in somebody who's probably negotiated that and dealt with, the home buying as well as you. And she is our guest. Stay right there. Coming up next. Yes, indeed. All right. You're listening to HomeWise Radio, HomeWiseRadio.com. If you ever have any questions of Michael, HomeWiseRadio.com. We'll be right back. HomeWise Radio, episode 13. This is our third segment today. You can always watch. There's so many resources. Very cool. HomeWiseRadio.com is where you can start, but we hope you
everywhere.
Add us on Facebook and other resources. But yes, that's, I think, important, and I think this is very important information to get out. We've been answering the questions, how much money do I need to buy a house? And I know an element of this is our next guest, and I'm going to let you introduce.
Thanks, Paul. In the studio with us, we have Brandy Dudenhoeffer. Hi, Brandy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Brandy's a realtor with St. Louis Premier Group, powered by Keller Williams. And I love to also talk about the awards that our guests have gotten. One of my favorite 5-star real estate agent and client satisfaction by St. Louis Magazine. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. You were on before, and we're doing video now. So just in case you didn't know.
And she's been very welcoming and okay with that.
It's very, you don't notice, you almost don't notice it's there.
Yeah.
I really try to forget about it. So thanks for coming back to the show. We're glad to have you back. Why don't you remind us, give us a little bit of your story, your background, and then I got a few questions for you.
Sure, absolutely. So I used to be a registered nurse. I worked in the healthcare industry for several years before I got into real estate. And I'm going on my 21st year in real estate.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey and a ride with the different shifting in the market. So,
Definitely the past couple of years.
Yes, absolutely.
And probably moving forward too in different ways. So
yes.
That experience serves you well, and also helping people with the nursing degree. You've done so many things, Brandy.
Yes, thank you. And I'm a Homes for Heroes Realtor affiliate. I'm also a Veterans Community Project Tiny Home sponsor. Just really love giving back to the community and partnering with lenders who really understand the process, and the strategy is one of the top things that I tell all of my buyers. They really need to make sure that they're partnering with someone who can create that strategy plan with them. So I think this is all great information.
Yeah, see how that fits in, Paul?
Yes, I do. Finally, I
It's
wouldn't
not
have
by
on
accident, right?
episode 1, 2,
It's
or
not
3, but now I
It's
do.
not come one, come all.
Yes, it
right?
didn't. You didn't just show up.
Specific, right? Yeah, we usually grab somebody off the street. Hey, come here a second. Well, thanks. You know, I'm probably overkill on strategy, but I just feel like, you know, it's better to do too much strategy and then not need it or use it than to not do enough and have needed it. So just err on the side of being conservative that way.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, we've been talking about the home buying process, how much money you need to put into the process, financial resources to have. And I've been hitting this from the loan side because that's the way people think about it. But in my mind, there's a big elephant in the room because I know it's there, but it gets missed a lot by people that are buying houses. And that is money that they might need that's related to the buying of the real estate, but outside the loan, right? Things that had to do with the house, all right, that are specific to the real estate transaction. So, like, what do you see on that?
Well, I really feel that it's important for agents to have buyer consultations and sitting down with the buyers and explaining the process and the money that they're going to need.
Yeah, questions.
Yes.
Asking questions.
Absolutely. Asking questions. And, you know, I go over things like, especially how much inspections cost, you know, and typically inspections are something that you pay for at the time of the service, just based on the inspector provided that service. So you want to pay for it at that time. Right. So I want to review with clients what money they're going to need prior to the actual closing table, like earnest money. That typically is at least 1% of the purchase price. And oftentimes buyers don't realize what the earnest money is or how much they really need for that.
Yep. And that earnest money is typically, it's money that it's not a separate closing cost, just for people listening that don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's not a separate category. It's just money that gets toward the normal costs of the transaction, so the down payment and the closing costs, but it's accelerated to the beginning of the process. It's money that's put down with the contract it's another way of collateralizing that contract, your offer to the seller. So if the seller accepts your offer, it means they're not accepting they might have other offers. They're not accepting those. If you can't close, there's a risk to them because now they've wasted time. It sort of, in some way, and I don't really understand this, but it taints the house. So
people can lose their earnest money.
Right. If you can't close and it's your fault. Okay. But go ahead.
Sure. And, I just like to explain with the earnest money that it is money that you're putting down in good faith, that you're going to purchase the home. It's not common that buyers lose it, but they need to know those costs up front. One thing that you mentioned was the 401k, and I often bring that up in buyers consultations and make sure that they're talking to the lender on that option. And a lot of times they don't understand that it's their money that they can borrow.
Right.
They're shocked.
Well, they've been told it's hands off. Which
don't touch your 401k.
Is why it's there and available to do something with, because you can't get to it easily.
Gives you some flexibility in this process if you utilize it.
Yes. And so then with the Homes for Heroes program that I'm a part of, when we help our local heroes buy a home, that includes police, fire, EMS, teachers, healthcare workers, and military, we are able to have discounted services through service providers like the title company. They offer a discount. Survey companies and the inspectors. So we're able to get those discounts for them that helps bring down the amount that they need for the closing costs.
Right. And that's so valuable because it just, and I mean, it's obvious, sure, everybody wants to save money. I want a discount, discount, I take that, being able to know that ahead of time and be able to plan on it. Right, because if you're doing this right, you're planning. And so you're asking the questions like you talked about. So we're like syncing up here on strategy, the idea of having strategy. If you don't have to spend money on closing costs, or if it's something that you're going to get back later on, you might be willing to, or be in a situation where you could make a different buying decision, right?
Yes.
Get that house you really want versus the one that you didn't want as much, I should say, because nobody buys a house that they don't want.
Yeah, but maybe not your absolute dream number one.
Well, right. Well, the original, scenario, which was, I thought I should be at 300, but we found the right house and it was 330. Right. So it's not just a larger monthly payment. We haven't even talked about that yet. But it's also some additional lump sum up front or financial resources up front on the loan in the form of down payment and closing costs. So
are you seeing that? Are you seeing overbidding and that kind of thing as well, like Michael was talking about in our first segment?
We are seeing that the market for the most part is normalizing. And however, depending on the price range in the area, there still are bidding wars. Another agent on our team had a client that lost due to 22 other offers just recently.
My gosh.
So it is still happening. It's just not as common.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
Yep. And so
crazy.
And again, those were all the, that sort of goes back to that closing costs bucket and kind of the financial end of things. So title company, inspectors, things like that. And Homes for Heroes does a fantastic job. If you're a hero, it's teachers, firefighters, the obvious EMT, you probably know this list better than I do. Who fits into that?
Sure. Police, fire, EMS, teachers.
I knew I'd miss a big one,
Healthcare workers and military. And that's active or retired. So we've helped several retired school teachers with real estate transactions, and they qualify.
Oh, and that's great.
Also, let me ask you this. This just popped into my head. I had talked about other strategies in my segment. One in particular, seller concessions. So seller could pay closing costs. Can you stack basically it's a shop for settlement service, pre-negotiated price, in this case under the banner of Homes for Heroes. But even if you weren't a hero and let's just say you got a buddy who works for title company, said, hey, you ever buy a house? I'll hook you up on title, right? Can you stack those?
Yes, absolutely.
So you could stack a benefit like here, so something like Homes for Heroes. You could also stack the seller's going to contribute, and you can stack all these other things to build a package that could really be spectacular.
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
And therein lies, Paul, therein lies the strategy.
Strategy.
Okay? Now, that doesn't come together on accident. It doesn't come together. It also doesn't come together naturally. Okay, like it doesn't just like sort of happen in and of itself. Somebody's got to push for it. But in order to, and not that you have to push hard, but somebody has to show up. And so Brandy said it perfectly, strategy. All right, this is not an accident. Why the pros?
Yeah,
okay,
it's smart.
Our guest experts, they start with the strategy because it's so important. But when you look at the numbers on this, so it's easy to look at something and say, it's just a little bit of money there. It's just a little bit of money over here. I can afford it. I just want the house.
Make it happen.
Like if I could just, if you stack all those up, what used to be little can become big. And not only can it become big today, but even if something starts small today, generally those benefits are going to compound throughout the rest of the loan because it winds up being either a better loan, money saved on the front end that could be put somewhere else, an additional investment somewhere, or just something that compounds through the rest of the amortization schedule.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, across time, and that's what we were talking about. You don't get any do-overs. Be smart in the beginning. You gave so many great examples. I love how you help people, too. RewardSTLHeroes.com. I just wanted to get that in there, RewardSTLHeroes.com. It seems like a lot of people can qualify for what you're talking about. A teacher, that's great.
Yes, it's amazing.
They are so important.
And in St. Louis, there's roughly about 10,000 realtors, and there's only a small handful, I think about 30, maybe 35 realtors that are part of the Homes for Heroes program. So it is key. If you are a hero and you want to take advantage of the program, you have to work with a realtor affiliate in order to get the rewards check. And so we're giving back a portion of our commission to the hero after closing. So it's a rewards check. And that is not from Homes for Heroes directly. It's coming from the agent and their commission. And it's our way of giving back and saying thank you. We want to thank them for their service. And last year in 2022, our team gave back over $50,000 to the heroes that we served.
Unbelievable. That is amazing.
So if you want to tie that back to, what makes that okay? Right? Because remember, they needed to be somebody that was, the money needs to come from somebody that has an interest in the party or some type of tie or skin in the game. A hero, so a teacher, right? A firefighter, police, all the categories that you listed, Brandy. There is a tie based on that profession or what you've chosen to do for a living. That they give so much.
A lot of people don't know that.
Right. And and so there was not built into underwriting guidelines. There wasn't a specific carve out. I mean, outside of a VA loan, right? Because that's a whole very special category, a whole nother category. This is unrelated to that, although you can use Home for Heroes and a VA. So again, stacking up those benefits, right?
Yes. You got to know about them.
Right. That there is that tie, it's skin in the game, right? There is something there that is above and beyond what an ordinary person has chosen to do with their life. And we, as an underwriter, right? So if I take off my loan officer hat and put on my underwriter hat, and I'm thinking about, okay, you know what? How do I fit this to make it work within the theory of the way that underwriting a loan works? That's it. Is that tie, right? Based on the profession, so that giving thing.
Yeah.
So the people that, like Brandy, that participate in Homes for Heroes, it's their form of the giving back to the people who've given so much.
Wow. Thank you for giving in that way. We need a special home loan for you who give to the heroes. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be.
RewardSTLHeroes.com. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Man, it's great to have you back. Michael, how do we get a hold of you, my friend?
Well, you can find me right here every week on HomeWise Radio. We're on Rumble. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on 101.9 FM and 94.1 FM.
Nice.
If
You're
you have
getting good.
digital
I'm not-
radio, even 99, what is it, 99.1
HD3?
99.1 HD3.
Yes. It's a lot of sources.
That's the one that I don't listen to because I don't have digital radio in the car.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
And then lots of streaming places. You can find it all in newstalkstl.com. But me personally, you find me at homewiseradio.com, mortgage website, Shelter Mortgage, GoShelter.com. And if you want to chat, talk to me, text me, 314-275-0314, right here local in the STL.
He loves the questions. You won't believe it. You can talk to him. It's a really cool thing. Thank you, Michael Midget.
Yep, they can talk to me.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes.
Paul.
I know that. And yes, I'm Paul Cook. You're listening to HomeWise Radio. He said it, homewiseradio.com. Thanks.
Loan and loan information provided by Michael Midget, NMLS number 205402, and Shelter Mortgage, Inc., 691 Trade Center Boulevard, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63005, NMLS number 192609, a Missouri residential mortgage licensee.